How's it? Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for tuning into Leadership Conversations. Um, it's another beautiful Monday. It's another beautiful Monday. It's a great day to be alive. It's a great week, a great start of another week. Thank you so much for tuning in. My lovely wife, Asha, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate the love and the support. Thank you to everyone who is taking their time to slowly but surely log in. I hope everyone's Monday has been there's been a start to a good day for each and every person, everybody here. I appreciate you taking the time every Monday to tune in with me. It's truly a pleasure always to be able to have these conversations with you, to talk about various leadership topics, to talk about various leadership subjects. For anyone who's tuning in for the first time, this is a time where we begin to discuss. We take the time out to discuss various leadership subjects, some of the challenges, some of the good, the bad, the ugly that comes along with leadership. And it's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you all. I appreciate you taking the time on your Monday to join me. I know sometimes it's rough trying to get your week started, but I hope to give some positivity and help to create a positive atmosphere so that we can get our week off, start our week off right. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful weather. And so just want to take the time to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for your support, for all those that are my regulars. Thank you so much. For anyone who's a newcomer, thank you so much for the time that you're spending. I promise you it's not something that you'll regret. I'm a firm believer that everyone has the potential to be a leader, and everybody has the ability to fulfill their leadership abilities. It's just about being able to recognize your leadership voice and really taking the time to really develop it. Not too many people realize that they have the potential to be great leaders, but they instead expect it to be something that's exclusive. They expect it to be something that is just for people who are overly charismatic, but we all have the potential to be leaders. Hey, Shanice, thanks for tuning in. We all have the ability to lead, and we all have the ability to be effective in what we're doing, and whether it's on your job, whether it's in your house, whether it's at your church, whether it is in your business or your nonprofit, we all have the potential to be leaders. And so I hope that as we have our conversations, that we all have the opportunity to really grasp something that'll be able to help, something that'll be able to challenge us, something that'll help us to grow, because I'm all about assisting leaders in their growth and their development. So thank you so much for tuning in. Susan, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate the support. Susan's one of my regulars. I'm about to bring Susan on here to teach. But thank you so much. It's truly a privilege. And I want to continue our conversations. We're talking about some of the challenges of leadership. And leadership is something that is so intricate and it's so vast at the same time, in that there's so many different abilities, there's so many different aspects to leadership, rather, that we have to think about, that we have to consider, that we have to face. And there's some things that we face that we don't even realize are leadership challenges. And so tonight, last week, we had a very good conversation about the imposter syndrome, right? I hope people were able to get something from that particular topic last week, because some of us tend to battle with this idea of the imposter syndrome, where we feel like a fraud, we feel like a fake, we feel like a phony, even while we're trying to lead and even while we're trying to fulfill our purpose. And so these are some of the things. People don't think that leaders go through problems. They think that you have to have it all together to be a leader, but leaders have just as much problems as everyone else. It's just that they're in front of everyone else for it to be seen. And so sometimes you may feel like a fraud. You may feel like you're not good enough. You may feel like you don't have the ability, and that you're you're succeeding off of pure luck, but it's not pure luck. You've been blessed with the capability to lead, and you've been blessed with your particular skills and talents and your purpose. We all have a purpose that God has given us, and so it's up to us to really tap into it. And so it's not luck that we are able to be successful. And when we recognize that when we identify the aspects and the signs of imposter syndrome, is about working towards moving away from that. It's about taking the focus off of yourself and focusing on what your purpose is. And when you do those things, you come to realize that your success, your accomplishments, it's not a one-time thing, but it's something that is continuous, and your path is laid out for you. And so that was our discussion last week. If you haven't had the chance to watch it, feel free to go back and check it out. It was something that was impactful for me, especially as somebody who has had that struggle of imposter syndrome, and even in identifying it myself, the challenges of identifying it myself, and then working towards growing out of that particular leadership struggle. Because it's a leadership struggle, it's a psychological struggle that tends to hold us back from being great. And so I want to continue the conversation, and this conversation is going to be very touchy. I gotta admit, it's going to be very touchy. It's going to be it's a hard kind of conversation to have. But before I jump into that, I want to make it known that this Saturday is the beginning of the Young Visionary Leadership program. So for those, there's still time to sign up. I'm still accepting incoming students until Wednesday. Actually, I'll make it Thursday, until Thursday. So anyone, a young man between the ages of 18 and 24 that can benefit from some leadership development, who needs help with creating a blueprint for their educational goals, a blueprint for their career goals, this is an opportunity for them to jump on. My plan is to share some of the leadership I was able to learn, but had to learn on my own. I had to struggle to learn on my own. There were certain opportunities that I missed out in that young age group. I missed out on internship opportunities. I missed out on career service opportunities. I missed out on some opportunities that were available to me as being a college student, and ultimately graduating with a degree, but still struggling to find a job. And so my desire is to help young men to avoid that pitfall, to avoid that trap. I was sharing with my wife the other day that when I was in college, one of the things that I was afraid to do was go to the career center. I was afraid to go to the career center because I didn't feel like I had a resume. I didn't feel like I had any skills. And I just was afraid of going there and being embarrassed. And when I reflect now, thinking about it, I wish I had taken that opportunity. I wish I had taken the opportunity to go there, create a resume early, learn about internship opportunities, develop interview skills, all of these things, which are vital to us when we enter into the job field and into the career field. And so, if you know any young man between the ages of 18 and 24 that can benefit, whether it's your son, whether it's your brother, your nephew, your cousin, that they can benefit from this, they have until Thursday. And you can go to KeenVisionLeadership.com/YVL. Trying to help build up young leaders who can be able to grow, who can have a head start amongst their peers, to have that head start and really fully take advantage of the college experience, really fully take advantage of internship opportunities, really have the take advantage of certain job opportunities. And so it's a 6-week course. They're going to be getting 6 weeks of training, as well as I'm providing some young visionaries with my visionary t-shirt, a leadership journal, as well as a leadership development book. So Go again. The website is keenvisionleadership.com/YVL, and go ahead and sign them up. Thank you, Asha. I was about to say, babe. Thank you, Asha, for posting that. KeenVisionLeadership.com/YVL, and they can be able to sign up. Thursday will be the deadline because we're kicking these things off on Saturday. All right. So just wanted to get that out of the way. Another announcement is that I won't be online next week. Next week we're going to be taking my nephew-in-law, my nephew to school, and so I'm excited about that. Being able to go with him. I feel so old, but being able to go with him away to college and seeing him off. So I won't be online next week. That's it for my housekeeping items. Now let's get to it. Tonight, like I said, the topic that we're going to be discussing is a little bit touchy, but it's something that we all face. It's a challenge that we all have to deal with, and we all encounter as leaders. And that's the challenge of people pleasing. People pleasing. One of the challenges that leaders tend to face is the challenge of wanting to be liked by everyone. You want to be liked by everybody on your team. You want to be accepted by everyone on your team. You want to be able to lead lead in a way that everybody is happy and everybody wants to follow you. And so a lot of times we struggle, especially as leaders, we struggle with that. We struggle with the desire of wanting to create an environment, to create a connection with everyone on the team so that everybody's happy. We always want to create an environment that allows people to thrive and be who they are. You want them to want to follow you. You want them to like you. You want them to approve of your leadership. And so we all want that as leaders. We all want to be able to establish a strong connection, right? Because leadership is is strengthened by your relationship. It's strengthened by your connection. And so the greater the connection, the stronger the team is. So it's natural that everybody wants to be that you want everybody that's under your leadership to be happy. And as leaders, we want to make sure that we create an environment, right? We want to create an environment where everyone is able to, as I said, thrive. And ideally, we want to create an environment where everybody is in unison. There's unity, there's synergy, there's harmony. Everybody's working together. Everybody's producing. Everybody's having a great time. There's no conflict. There's no tension. There's no disagreement. There's no problems at all. That's what we want ideally as leaders, to be able to create that kind of environment where everybody, everyone is on all firing on all cylinders. We're laughing, we're giggling, we're eating, we're drinking, we're having a good time, we're getting things done, we have momentum, everybody's happy. That's what we want to do as leaders, make everybody happy. And of course, it's a great quality of a leader to desire that. It's a great quality of a leader to be empathetic. It's a great quality of a leader to be considerate of others and those that are on your team. And so ultimately, we all want that. We want perfect unity. We want unison. We want single-mindedness. We want everybody doing what they have to do. And we're all communicating and we're all connecting and we're all working, supporting one another so that we can ultimately accomplish the vision. But unfortunately, that's not the reality, right? That's not the reality that of that kind of perfect environment. And one of the dangers of leadership is trying to create that perfect environment where everyone is happy, because you ultimately end up falling in the trap of people pleasing. Now, it's a challenge that every leader will face at some point in his or her leadership. When you want to create that positive environment, you want to create that environment of growth and opportunity. But it's important to understand that as leaders, while you want to create a perfect and positive environment, You don't want to create an environment where you're trying to please everybody. Because let's talk about it. It's impossible to please everybody. It's impossible to make everybody happy. Let's keep it real. Good evening, Pastor Troy. Thank you for tuning in. It's impossible to please everybody. And we feel that burden as leaders that we want everybody to just be happy. We want to sing and hold hands and sing kumbaya and all things be great, all things be good. But it's impossible to please everybody. It's impossible to make everybody happy. Why is that? Well, we all have different emotional states. We all have different mental states. We all have different backgrounds, different histories, different perspectives, different ideas of what's best. We have different aspirations. We all have different goals. And all on top of all of that, they all vary and juggle from day to day. Right? Today, this person is happy and they're the most pleasant to be around, and tomorrow they're rude, they're mean, they're unfriendly, and then the next day it's like nothing ever happened and they're good again. Imagine trying to balance all of that. Everyone in their own personal, facing their own personal challenges, and then coming in the team environment, and we all have different strengths. We all have different strengths. We all have different skills, and so we're always. And this is a little tip for leaders, right? Understand that as leaders, you have to have a 360 point of view, right? You're looking at the overall picture. You're looking at everything that's going on in the organization, in the business, in the ministry. But you, as the leader who is 360, recognize that the people that are on your team are only going to have 90 and 45 and 55 degree vision, right? Because they're going to be viewing things from the perspective of their area, their skill set. They're always going to be approaching things from what's going to benefit their department, right? So someone who's in HR is going to have a different perspective from someone who is in media versus someone who's in marketing versus someone who's in accounting. So all these people in different departments are going to have different ideas and different perspectives, and they're all going to think of different ways to make things work. And of course, they're going to think that their idea is the best. And so sometimes leaders, they forget about that and they get offended that everyone is not agreeing. But ultimately, you hired them, you recruited them for their particular area of expertise. And so you should expect them to have that perspective or that mindset or that idea from their particular area of expertise. It's up to you as the leader now to delegate, redirect, direct, and set the overall, set the vision and the goals based on the overall, or set the milestones based on the overall vision and goals. So that's just a key point that I want to just throw in there, because as leaders, we have to be 360 minded, but we have to expect that people are only going to be singular focused based on whatever their skills are. And so we can't take their passion, we can't take offense to how strong they'll push their agenda, because ultimately that's why you recruited them. And so don't take offense, but try to see from each perspective and figure out how does it fit into the overall picture. So just a quick point that I want to just throw in there. But what am I saying? That it's impossible to please everyone because everyone has their own mindset, their own ideas, and trying to make everyone happy and trying to get everyone to agree on everything. It's like trying to solve 6 Rubik's cubes while balancing on a tightrope and juggling. It's absolutely impossible. It's impossible, and it's the quickest way to burn out. You want to find the fast way to burn out, to stress yourself out. Try sitting and figuring out how you're going to make everyone happy, because ultimately you find that Sue, her the thing that made her happy today is not what's going to make her happy next week. And Sue is not going to agree with John, and John is not going to agree with Henry, and Henry's not going to agree with Bob, and Bob is not going to agree with Dave. So trying to please everyone, you're ultimately setting yourself up to burn out. And that's what happens with as leaders when we're trying to people please. We put ourselves in this trap, in this pitfall, where we're trying to make everyone happy, and it ultimately becomes a detriment to us. Now, the funny thing is that as leaders, we know this. We know that people pleasing is dangerous. We know that it's hard, it's difficult, but yet for some reason we still find ourselves falling into that trap. And my question is, why? Why do we still fall for it? Why do we still fall into the trap of people pleasing? Now, as we've been discussing, right? We've been discussing and talking about various leadership challenges, right? A lot of these things develop over time. And it's not a goal necessarily to be people pleasing. And a lot of leaders that fall into that trap of people pleasing don't even realize that they're in that trap of people pleasing. Why? Because a good leader knows how to value people, right? They value people. I'm always talking about adding value to others. And so good leaders, they focus, they're dedicated to adding value to others. They're dedicated to trying to create relationships, building networks, building connections. And a very good leader is often selfless, right? A great leader knows how to be selfless, right? They're always going with the approach of being positive, always trying to be inspiring, trying to motivate everyone on the team. They know how to value other strengths, right? And their abilities. They are empathetic and they understand other people's feelings and needs. All of these aspects are, in a sense, the positive parts of people pleasing. And a great leader has those qualities where they're trying to motivate, they're trying to inspire, they're trying to build up, they're trying to empower. And so all you know is that that's your focus. These are the things that you're trying to do, but you don't even realize sometimes that you end up falling into this trap of people pleasing. You fall into this pitfall where now you're trying to make everybody happy without even consciously realizing it. Now, when you think about people pleasing, right? We all know about it. We all talk about it. But what is the cause of it? What is the root of it? What I've come to realize is that people pleasing can be rooted in poor self-esteem. It can be rooted in a traumatic past experience, right? Where we've experienced rejection, or we experienced disappointment, or we experienced almost abuse, I want to say. And so you start to develop this kind of people-pleasing mindset. But one of the biggest things that I found out about people-pleasing is that one of the biggest roots of people pleasing is a fear of conflict and the fear of confrontation. Sometimes most people fall into that pitfall of people pleasing because they're afraid of confrontation. They were afraid to have conflict. And so whenever there are signs of conflict, there's signs of an issue, of a problem, you start to get anxiety. You start to get anxiety. You start to get uncomfortable. You want to avoid it because it takes too much effort. It takes too much energy. And as a result, you start to downplay how you feel, right? And you hide what you really think in order to maintain peace. Now, it's something that I personally come to realize that it was a struggle of mine that I had to overcome, right? Because by nature I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert, and so I stay to myself. You know, I have a few people that I'm close to, but being in large crowds make me nervous. I kind of close up until I feel comfortable. I get super uncomfortable, right? Being around people too often. And so being a part of that, coming to realize that sometimes having to deal with conflict was a struggle, right? Having conflict, having to address issues, and having to confront certain issues, it's uncomfortable. It makes you feel you feel like it's too much work. It's too much effort to have a disagreement. It's too much work to it's much easier to just let you have that one than it is to go back and forth with you. Now, let me know if this is something that you identify with, because we're here to help each other grow. But conflict and confrontation, it's so easy to just let it slide, let it go, let them have that win, let them think what they want to think, because it's so much easier for me to just not exert that kind of energy, not to get into it with you, because now it's taking up my time, it's taking up my emotions, and I just want to avoid it. And so a lot of us, we have that battle, we have that struggle where conflict and confrontation makes us uncomfortable. And so we try to avoid it by any means necessary. But the thing is that when we do try to avoid it, it puts us in a position where we start to people please. Now, people pleasing, why is it dangerous? Why is it difficult? One of the reasons why it's difficult is, as I said, it requires too much energy and it drains you. It drains you mentally. It drains you emotionally. It takes up your whole time, because next thing you know, you're going back and forth, and an hour has passed, 2 hours have passed, and so now you've lost time. Right? Another thing is that it causes anxiety. It causes frustration, right? When you're in a position where you're people pleasing, and I'm going to share with you some of the signs of people pleasing, but you come to realize that ultimately when you start to people please and you put all this effort into trying to make people happy, you get anxious, you get tired, you get frustrated, and you lose your authenticity. You start to lose your identity. You start to lose who you are, because you're adapting to this person, and you're adapting to that person, and you're adapting to that person, and then you're adapting to that person. And so you're adapting to each person until ultimately you don't even recognize who you are anymore, because you're just agreeing with everybody with regardless of how you feel, regardless of what your personal values are. So you start to lose your authenticity. You start to lose your identity. Another thing that makes it dangerous is that people find ways to manipulate you. They know that you're not going to confront them. They know that you're not going to disagree with them. And so they find ways to take advantage of you. And when they take advantage and they manipulate you, now you start to feel undervalued. You start to feel underappreciated. You start to feel like, what's the point of doing all of this if nobody's going to care, right? People take advantage of that. People take advantage of your commitment. People will expect you to be committed to them without being committed to you. They want you to help them with their goals, their vision. They want you to agree with them and their points of views. And when it comes to now the reverse, they're nowhere to be found. And so they find ways to take advantage of you. Another dangerous thing about people pleasing is that you find it hard to make decisions. Right? Because when it comes time to make a decision on certain things, you start to wonder, what is this person going to think? What is that person going to think? How is this person going to feel? Will they approve? Will they like me? Will they agree with my decision? Will they argue with my decision? And you start to, the things that should be easy, decisions that should be easy to make becomes difficult and challenging. Another dangerous thing about people pleasing is that you ultimately sacrifice your overall goals and desires to make others happy. You spend all this time trying to make people happy, and all that time that you should have been putting into building up yourself, that you should have put into working towards your goals, the time that you should have been, the energy you should have been putting in towards building your vision, ultimately gets lost. You sacrifice that and redirect that energy into making others happy. Now, when you are, a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, your effort and your energy to make someone else happy usually doesn't have an outcome, a positive outcome, or whatever the overall goal of that individual. Sometimes, most of the times, don't even include you. Right? You're trying to help, you're trying to support, but their plans and their goals is strictly about them and what they want to accomplish. And the minute that they have another opportunity, or they find someone that can do what you do better, they're going to drop you like a fly and keep it moving with that next individual. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're sacrificing your goals and your dreams and your desires to please others. Because ultimately, and this is the last point of another reason why it's dangerous, in that ultimately when you reach your breaking point, you really reach your breaking point. Right? When you reach that breaking point, you become callous, you become resentful, you close your heart, you close your emotions, you become numb, you don't let anybody in because of all the years that you put into pleasing others and making others happy. You get to that point where you're broken now, and you've experienced disappointment. You had expectations that weren't met. You feel rejected, you feel used, you feel abused, and ultimately you develop this callousness, this numbness, where now you don't care about nobody. Now you don't care about anyone or how anyone feels. You don't care about whether or not they need you. You don't care about anything. Now it's just, I'm focused on me, myself, and I. And a lot of people too who fall into the trap of people pleasing, when they get to that breaking point, they become 110% selfish. They become selfish and start to think about themselves and start to think about what they can do for me. I've given too much of my time to that, and now I'm living with regret. Now I'm living with resentment. So now I'm just gonna do me. Ooh, I feel the silence. But these are some of the things that we have to acknowledge and recognize, because it becomes difficult. It hurts you more than it helps. It hurts you more than it helps. And now I'm not saying that you shouldn't help others and you shouldn't support others and you shouldn't sacrifice, but don't sacrifice your goals and your visions for somebody else's, because when they accomplish theirs, chances are they're not going to help you accomplish yours. Now, some people will, but you don't want to sacrifice your goals and your dreams and your vision to make others happy, because ultimately it hurts more than it helps. Now, I want to give some signs of people pleasing. Some signs of people pleasing. And let me give this disclaimer again, because I give this disclaimer every week so that we all understand that these things that I'm bringing about, these subjects that I'm talking about, is not geared toward any individual. It's not personalized. I didn't create these things with any single person in mind. But if the shoe fits, then you wear it. And ultimately, the point of these things is to help each and every one of us to identify what our challenges are and help one another to grow from it. When you identify and you're able to define what your challenges are, now you can intentionally work towards improving and growing from it. So I want to throw a disclaimer out there because this is based on research. If anything, it's based on personal experience as well. Things that I've experienced in my own leadership growth. And so when you do the research, you come to realize that these are some common things that common challenges that leaders will face, and some common signs that you'll see when people fall into that trap of people pleasing. Number one sign of people pleasing is that you pretend to agree with others, even when you're not really in agreement. You know you don't agree with what this person is saying. You don't agree with their perspective. You don't agree with their points of view, but you pretend to be in agreement. You pretend to be in agreement so that you can just get. Those are the times where people are saying they're talking and they're saying something and it don't make no sense, but you're just like, yeah, right? You know in your heart you don't agree with it at all. But you agree with it because you want to keep that peace. You don't want to have no problems. You don't want to have any issues. And so you pretend to agree with others just to avoid conflict. But really and truly in your heart, it goes against what you believe. It goes against your values. It goes against everything that you stand for. But again, you're trying to avoid conflict. So that's number one. Number two, you feel responsible for how others feel. You don't try to, you're overly considerate. Let me not say you're considerate, but you're overly considerate about how others feel. And you take responsibility for how others feel and how they react. Right? And number three, to tag with that, you often apologize. You often apologize for how people feel or how people react because you feel that responsibility for them. You feel that responsibility that, man, if they're upset, if they're annoyed, if they're angry, I have to do something to fix it. And so you take on that responsibility. You try to apologize. You try to say whatever you can to make things better, to try to fix it. And ultimately, even if you feel like you're right? Even if you don't feel, even when it's not your fault, even when you didn't do anything wrong, you still take that responsibility and you still apologize because of it. Number four, you neglect your own needs in order to do things for others. I remember I had that issue where I would take on other responsibilities or take on other tasks, right? Even though I knew I didn't have enough time, even though I knew I didn't want to do it, right? But I still took it on and I neglected my own needs to do things for others. Time that I should have been spending in towards work, building what I was doing, working on my projects, working on my goals. I pushed those things to the side to do other things for other people. You neglect your own needs in order to do things for others. That's another sign of people pleasing. Number five, you're preoccupied with what others think. You're preoccupied with what others think. So before you make a decision, before you say anything, even after you do something, right? You start to wonder and question, oh, what are people going to think about me? How are people going to react to my dreams? How are people going to react to my goals? How are people going to react to what I say? You start to worry about what other people are thinking about you, right? And so sometimes in doing that, you hold back. You hold back your thoughts, you hold back your opinions, you even delay your goals because you're afraid of how people may react to it. Right? You have a dream and you have a goal to do these things, but people in your family don't approve. People in your church don't approve. People in your circle don't approve. But you know within your heart that this is something that you need to do. But because you're preoccupied with how they think, you put it on the back burner. You delay it because you're more concerned about their reaction than you are about accomplishing your goals. Number 6, this is a big one. You have a hard time saying no. You have a hard time saying no. You feel like when you say no that it makes you look selfish. It makes you look mean. It makes you look like a bad person. It makes you look like you don't care. And a lot of times you just have to say no because you just don't have the bandwidth for it. But you find it hard to say no because you don't want to give people that impression that you don't care. You don't want to give people that impression that you're only thinking that you're just selfish. Because people tend to do that. And that's a part of the manipulation process, right? You do everything to help others. And the one moment that you decide to do for yourself, they try to make you feel guilty. They try to make you feel bad. They try to portray you as being selfish. Even though these last 10 things are dedicated towards doing what you needed to do. I put all this effort and energy into making you happy. And now the moment that I'm putting my own self first, my own needs first, and I'm saying no to you, now you're trying to make me look selfish. You're trying to make me look like I don't care. That's a part of the manipulation tactic. That's a part of the gaslighting tactic to make you feel guilty about taking care of your own needs versus their needs. These are some real things, being gaslighted, where they make you feel guilty because you say no. So that was number 6, right? Number 6, you have a hard time saying no. Number 7, you feel uncomfortable when someone is upset with you. You feel uncomfortable, like I said before. You're trying to figure out ways to make things right. You're trying to make them feel better. You just don't want them to be upset with you. And so when they're upset, you're uncomfortable. Number 8, you have difficulty addressing problems. And so instead of addressing a problem, you quickly take the blame. I lost my assistant. But you have because you have difficulties addressing problems and addressing issues, you quickly take the blame, even when it's not your fault. Because you figure if I just take the blame for this, then everything will be good and we can move on from here. So you quickly take the blame, even when it's not your fault. Number 9, you my assistant Asha, you're missing out. You got to give the notes. So let's go from the top. Number 1, you pretend to agree with others even when you don't agree. Number 2, you feel responsible for how others feel. Number 3, you often apologize. Number 4, you neglect your own needs in order to do things for others. Number 6, you have a hard time saying no. Number 7, you're uncomfortable when someone's upset. Number 8, you quickly take the blame because you have a difficulty addressing problems. Number 9 is that you don't express how you feel to others when they hurt you. Right? When someone hurts you, you don't express how you feel to them. You don't express that this thing hurt me because you're afraid that they're going to get upset. They're going to blame you. You're going to feel you're going to be afraid that is going to lead to an argument. You're afraid that's going to lead to a confrontation. And so you don't express how you feel to others. And then number 10, you bottle up your emotions. You suppress it, you push it down, you give that awkward smile, and you smile and you nod, but inside your blood is boiling. You're hurt, you're broken, and you suppress it and you bottle all of it up. But the problem with that, when you bottle up your emotions and you suppress it, eventually it comes out and you end up exploding on the wrong person. And usually you explode on the one person that you feel most comfortable with. And usually the person that you feel the most comfortable with is the one that cares about you the most. And so it's dangerous to bottle up your emotions. It's dangerous to suppress how you feel, because when you ultimately explode and you ultimately blow up on the wrong person. And so now you have an issue with the one person, the couple of people that actually care about you, and you end up pushing them away, because you end up pushing them away and it's not even their fault. They have nothing to do with it. You blow up on them because of something that your best friend did 10 years ago, or your mom did 10 years ago, or your dad did 20 years ago. All those things that you bottle up, or big thing, right? Where you bottle up how your coworkers, how a coworker makes you feel, and you come home and you blow up on everybody in your house. That's something that's very common. And so these are some of the signs of people pleasing. Now, how do we learn to overcome those challenges? How do we learn to overcome people pleasing? How do we maneuver out of the pitfall and the trap of people pleasing? First of all, when you're able to identify all of these signs and all of these things, you recognize, okay, now I'm falling into the trap of people pleasing. You got to try to figure out ways to combat those feelings, or combat those signs. So the first thing that I always say is that you have to be aware. Once you become aware and you're able to identify these signs and you're able to identify the issues, then you start to make intentional moves to grow out of it. You start to recognize the triggers, and you start to figure out ways to either heal from it and to grow from it. And so as leaders, right, we have to learn to overcome the people-pleasing mindset. So once you become aware of the signs, right, you have to be aware, or you have to realize that you have a responsibility to the overall vision, right? The overall goal, the bigger picture. What is the bigger picture that you're working towards? When you realize and recognize the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish, right? Then you start to maneuver from people pleasing to people leading. As leaders, we have a responsibility to challenge those that are on our teams, those that we're leading, those that are following us, those that are on our teams. We have a responsibility to challenge them, and we have a responsibility to direct them towards accomplishing the overall vision. And so when you recognize that the overall goal, there's a bigger picture, then you're not going to be worried about how someone feels in the moment. Because oftentimes people be upset with you today about something, and then they'll completely forget about what they were upset about you a week later. But guess what? This vision takes years to build. And so I can't get caught up in how you feel right now. I can't be caught up in how you feel in the moment, because we have to work towards a bigger goal. You may not like my decisions. You may not like my ideas. Feel free to express that. But ultimately, my job is not to please you. My job is to help, is for all of us, is to direct all of us in the direction of accomplishing the vision. So you have to challenge your team, and you have to challenge those that are with you. So when you have that mindset, and you have that at the forefront of your thoughts, it makes you to start analyzing your interactions. You start to analyze, it causes you to analyze your interactions with your team and with those that are around you, right? And you have to ask yourself certain questions. The first question you have to ask is, what is best for the organization? Is making you happy best for the organization, or is making this move the best for the organization? Because guess what? You may not like me now, or you may not like what I'm doing right now, but that's okay. Eventually, you'll catch on. But there is a end result that we're trying to get to, and you have to be on board. And so, what is best for the organization? Because let me tell you something. As I said before about leaders having a 360-degree view, recognize that the people that are on your team, they may not see your vision as clearly as you see it. People that are on your team, they're following you for a reason. You're the leader of this team for a reason. And so you have a vision, you have the perspective of the bigger picture. You have the bird's eye view of what you're trying to accomplish. And so the people on your team may not understand why you make certain decisions. And that's quite all right. It may make them upset, but eventually down the line, they'll begin to see the direction that you're going in. And so what is best for the organization? That's the first question you got to ask yourself. What is best for the organization? Another thing you have to ask yourself is, what's best for everyone within the organization? Because if I'm going to focus all my energy and my time on trying to make Tom happy, then guess what? The other 5 people on my team are not going to get the attention that they need. They're not going to get the support that they need in order to accomplish or to get their jobs done. So I got to make a decision. Am I going to focus on trying to make you happy, or am I going to, what's best for the organization? Is it best, for those within the organization, is it for me to focus on you and your issues, or your problems, or to make you happy, or is it to focus on building this thing? So once you ask what's best for the organization, you have to ask what is best for the others within the organization. Because it's not a one-man show, it's a team effort. And then you have to ultimately ask yourself, what is best for you? Because if you're going to be drained mentally and emotionally, you're not going to have time for yourself. It's going to cause health problems. It's going to cause mental problems. You're going to be emotionally torn. And so you have to be able to do what's best for you. It's possible to be selfless and to think of yourself, right? When you're on an airplane, they tell you if the plane is going down, you got to put the mask on yourself first, and then you assist the person next to you. You have to care about yourself. You have to be self-conscious and do what's best for your overall health. Because eventually, if you drain and you die, everybody else is going to move on. Yeah, they may cry when you're gone for a little bit, but eventually everybody moves on. And so what's the point in sacrificing yourself and becoming a martyr, right? You become a martyr and you die for the goals, just for everyone to move on with their goals and their lives. So you have, and I know that's a little bit extreme, but sometimes that's what happens, because a lot of people, they become so stressed by their jobs that they have brain aneurysms, and they have heart attacks, and they have high cholesterol, and they have all these health issues that because of they're stressed out about their jobs. And then the minute they die on Monday, and by Wednesday the company has hired somebody to replace them. It's harsh, but it's the truth, and it's a fact. And so it's possible to still be selfless but still take care of yourself. So these are some of the questions that you have to ask. What's best for the organization? What's best for those within the organization? And what's best for me? When you think about these things, then you shift yourself from being that people-pleasing person, and you push yourself into being into focus on leading them. Right? So that's another one. Another thing that you have to learn to do is be okay with saying no. You can say no to request, right? And it doesn't take a whole lot, right? Sometimes we because we're afraid to say no, because we don't like to say no, we go through this long explanation of, well, I got to do this, I got to do that, and then we kind of eventually get to the place where we say maybe, or I'll try, right? You ever get to that point where you, in your heart, you want to say no, but you end up saying, I'll try, or let me see what I can do, right? Because you're trying to explain to soften the blow. But you got to be okay with saying no, right? And you can say no without it being harsh. You can say no without it being rude. You can say no without it being disrespectful, right? All you have to do is kindly share that you just don't have the bandwidth at this time. I don't have the bandwidth at this time, or I don't have anything. I'm not able to take anything on my plate right now, and so I can't do this for you. And just leave it at that. You don't have to go into a whole explanation of, well, I got to pick up the kids, and then I got to stop at the supermarket, and then I got to cook dinner, and then I got to clean, and then I got to put the kids to bed, and then you don't have to go into all of that. As the leader, hey, can't do this right now, or I know you want to do this, but unfortunately, the organization where we're going, we can't afford to. We don't have the bandwidth to take this on. Maybe at a later point we'll have a discussion about it. Maybe we can table it for now, and then we can bring it up later on down the line when things start to ease up. Right? You got to be confident as a leader, because you know that you're ultimately working towards a goal. You're working towards building something that others need, right? You're trying to. There's an audience. There's a people out there that need your service, that need your product, and so you got to keep that as the focus. Everything outside of that, that's extra. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say, let's table it for now, and eventually, maybe down the line, we can talk about it again. So be okay with saying no. Another thing, and I just have a few more points and I'm going to let you go. But another thing is that you got to establish expectations and boundaries. You got to establish expectations and boundaries. When you are able to establish expectations and establish boundaries, then people will know not to cross certain lines. People will know not to expect certain things from you. Right? When you make the clear expectation, listen, this is what we're doing. This is what we're all about. And we all know this, right? Because when we get interviewed for a job, when we decide to join a ministry, or we decide to join an organization, the first thing they do when you join is outline the goal of the organization, the purpose of it, the direction, the expectations of the organization, and they set the boundaries. Listen, we need you here by 9 o'clock. You get off of work at 5 o'clock. You get an hour lunch break. You get 2 15-minute breaks. We need you to work on these projects. And they outline the expectations and they set the boundaries, right? Don't come in at 9, 10. Don't come in at 10 o'clock. Don't come in at 11:30. You can't leave at 4 o'clock. You can't leave at 4:30. They establish these things. And so as leaders, we have to be able to establish expectations and boundaries. Listen, I know that I'm a nice person. I know that I'm good to I'm fun. You know, I try to make you feel comfortable. I try to make you feel a part. I try to establish a connection and these things, but there's certain lines that you just can't cross. There's certain boundaries that you can't cross, right? And it's something that you have to establish, because especially as leaders, and because of the fact that you care, you try to make yourself available all the time, right? I I remember the church, this church that I used to go to, right? The pastor was loving, he was caring, he was family oriented, but one thing he didn't do, he didn't give out his address. Don't show up at his house unexpected. He didn't let people know where he lived. You weren't welcome in his home like that. When I see you at church, or you can call me whenever you need me. But you can't come to my house. Don't call me after a certain hour, certain time of the day, because I have my family, right? He let the church know, listen, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm all of these things. And so there's certain boundaries that you're not okay to cross. If you're gonna call me after a certain hour, if you're gonna call me at midnight, make sure it's important. Make sure it's an emergency. Otherwise, talk to God, right? I'm laughing because it just made me think of, I don't know if anybody's seen the 5 Heartbeats. And I always talk about this when I talk about establishing boundaries and establishing expectations, right? Anybody seen the 5 Heartbeats? Big Red. He was like, my office hours are between 9 and 5. Do not contact me. And when the singer busted into his hotel room and was like, I need to talk now about my money, what did he do? He had his bodyguards hang the singer off the side of the balcony, off of the 10th floor of the building, held him upside down off the side of the balcony. And while the guy is yelling, let me go, put me in. When they finally pulled him in, Big Red goes to him and he taps him on the cheek and says, now my office hours are when? Between 9 and 5. And and that's how you got to be sometimes. You got to set those boundaries so that people can learn to respect, and people can learn to appreciate who you are, because ultimately as leaders we play multiple roles. And the minute you start to let people cross certain boundaries, then they start to get familiar, then they start to take advantage, and you never want to put yourself in that position where people now start to take advantage of you and advantage of who you are. So establish expectations, establish boundaries, and allow people to respect those boundaries, right? Another thing is that you got to maintain your values and be confident in your ability to lead. A lot of us, we are leadership roles, and we may feel like we're not capable. Like last week, we may feel like we're imposters, but still be confident in your ability to lead. You know that you are good at what you do. You have a particular skill set. There's a reason why you're in that leadership role. And so be confident, maintain your values, maintain those values. Don't allow anybody or anything to shift you from your values and your beliefs. You got to maintain your values in spite of how people may react, or how people will want you to compromise who you are to make them happy. So maintain your values and be confident in your ability to lead. And then the last one is that you have to work towards being comfortable with tough conversations. This is a big one for leaders. You got to work towards being comfortable with tough conversations. You got to realize that ultimately not all confrontation is bad, and it's better to address and have these tough conversations early so that you can avoid things growing and becoming a bigger problem later on. I think what people tend to think is that when you have these confrontations, people think that when you have these when you correct those that you're leading, that is just going to be a harsh back and forth, is going to be a battle, is going to be explosive. But it's possible to confront, it's possible to correct, it's possible to have those tough conversations without it being detrimental, without it being an issue. And so you have to have those tough conversations. And it's all about really just framing those conversations in the way of creating a learning opportunity and focusing on building a solution. Right? Not every conversation has to be, you did this wrong, and we're gonna write you up, and yada yada yada. It's not always about that, but it's about laying out, hey, this is the problem. This is here are some ways that we think that it can be fixed. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? And you keep it focused on creating a solution and not focusing on the problems. And when you start to develop that and you start to become comfortable with that, then you find that it's less hard. It's less difficult to have those difficult conversations, and it becomes less challenging to. It becomes less uncomfortable to address problems. And then the important thing is that when you have tough conversations, that it's best not to keep silent. Whenever there's an issue, it's always best to address it early than to address it late. Because when you address it late, one, your silence in the matter, people perceive silence as a sign of approval, right? For those of us that are parents, right? If our child does something wrong and they see that you don't respond to them, or you don't reprimand them, and they see that you're silent, then they think that it's okay for them to do. And a lot of times as adults, we carry the same thing, where we do something wrong and then we see that there's silence, that no one's saying anything, and so it must be okay, it must be approved. And you don't want to give that kind of sign where people start to think that your silence is a sign of that you approve of their actions or their behavior. And so it's always best to address problems early than late, because you don't want it to grow, you don't want it to fester, you don't want it to have a snowball effect where ultimately later on it becomes an even greater conflict than if you had just had that conversation early, you had squashed it, you had nipped it, you created a win-win situation and a solution. And ultimately, when you have those tough conversations, it becomes a little bit easier. And so we have to be comfortable with develop a comfortability with having those tough conversations. And with all of these, it's always about having the bigger picture in mind. It's not about how you feel about what an individual is doing. It's not about your fear of confrontation. It's not about trying to make other people happy. But how does it fit into the overall goal? When you always keep the bigger picture as the focus, then you find that people pleasing becomes less of your focus, and it becomes less of a pitfall. And so always keep the main thing the main thing. Keep the bigger picture as your goal, and when you keep that in mind, then it'll be easier to help everyone kind of work towards that overall goal. So that's all I have today about people pleasing leadership. Like I said, it's something that is a trap and a pitfall that we tend to fall in sometimes unexpectedly. But because of the fact that as leaders, we're empathetic, we care for people, we want to create an environment where they can be able to thrive and flourish. But you got to be careful not to fall into that place where we're trying to please everybody and we're trying to make everybody happy. Because ultimately, it's not about making people happy, but it's about accomplishing the goal. It's about those that need your service. It's about those that need your products. It's about those that need your ministry. It's about those who are in need. And so a lot of times, and I'm going to make this last point, a lot of times when you fall into people pleasing, it's not about whether you're doing things right or wrong, but it's based on other people's preferences. See, a lot of people, they get upset not because you're a bad leader or because you're doing things ain't the wrong way. They tend to get upset because you're doing things that are outside of what they prefer. And when you recognize that it's not about whether you're doing things right or wrong, but about meeting people's preferences, then you realize that I don't need to please people. It's not about your preferences. Your preferences are not greater than the organization, is not greater than the overall goal. Now, I'll be considerate, I'll be caring, I'm thoughtful, I'm empathetic. I want to make sure that you're good. I want to make sure you're doing well, but within the parameters of the organizational goals, not about your preferences. I see that so much, especially in churches where people get upset with pastors because not because they're preaching the wrong thing or teaching the wrong thing or they're not good shepherds, but because of the fact that it goes against what I prefer. And submission is not based on your preferences, right? Following a leader is not based on your preferences. It's about identifying with the vision, identifying with the mission, and being playing your part, playing your role in accomplishing that. And so I want to leave that with us tonight so that we can identify these challenges, identify these signs, and then make the steps towards being more of a leader than a people pleaser. And I think once we work on these things and start to build on it, then we start to gain more momentum and more success. And we really truly get things accomplished because all of our energy and all of our effort is focused on the main thing. And it's not focused on trying to make everybody happy. And so I hope that was helpful. I hope you were able to get something from it this week. Use this week to start thinking about your own habits, your own perspective, your own challenges. Do you have or struggle with people pleasing? If you do, how can you navigate? How can you redirect your energy and your focus towards building the vision? Because ultimately that's what it's about. And so thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all and all of you taking the time out to hear me, to join me in these conversations. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate all of your feedback. Like I said, registration will be open until Thursday for those who are interested in the Young Visionary Leadership Program. I'm kicking it off on Saturday with those that have already signed up. And so if you know anyone, but any young man between the ages of 18 and 24, please direct them to the website, KeenVisionLeadership.com/YVL. Get them signed up. The deadline will be Thursday. It will be Thursday. And so please reach out to them. Let them know that this is something they can benefit from. It's something that's going to help them to grow and help them to be prepared, help to set the blueprint for for their ultimate educational and career goals. And so with that being said, thank you so much. Just another reminder, I will not be live next week, but I will be back the following week. So ultimately, thank you so much. I pray that you guys will have a blessed week. I pray that God will put his hand upon you, that he will cause you to experience success, that he will open up doors, that he will cause the networks to be open. He will cause you to find the partners that you need, that he will connect you with the right people that are going to help you push forward your overall vision and your goal and help to build you as leaders. And so thank you so much. I love you all. I appreciate you. Have a blessed night.